And that was the pretty sketchy keep for Game 3, right, where he basically didn't play any spells.
Sketchy is putting it nice.
Well, I mean, he had the tools that he needed. He has 17 white sources in his deck. I mean, I feel like it is a calculated risk on Seth's part.
So the person who I asked mulligan, like Martin usually loves to mulligan.
He used to.
Whoa, has he changed?
Well, I know that.
Have we gotten to him?
Listen, no, I know for the first few years he was like, yes, you have to mulligan that hand. The hand is so bad, you can't possibly win, blah, blah, blah. And then he started hanging around with, like Luis, who's just like, well, look at my sample hand. It has like a Hexplate Golem, like another 7-drop. And then Martin's just like, no, you have to mulligan. And then now he's just like, whatever, Luis, you can keep it. And I think that kind of just like seeped into like his being. And now he's just like, oh, whatever, it's fine.
I'll get there. Seth cap, what, do you know the exact handicap? I think it was like 2 Rams.
It was at least a Ram, a Fiend Slayer Paladin, an Archangel. I don't think there was like a playable blue card. He didn't play Syncopate, Negate, Dissolve. I don't think it was Dispel. I don't think there was a Jace. Maybe there was a Revelation. But it was a lot of white cards.
Okay.
And it was Island Mutavault or Island Mutavault. I'm not sure which.
That's only loss, though. That's his only loss. He's beaten everybody else.
That was it. That was his only loss, was when he literally didn't play any spells that game.
Yeah. So we'll see what happens here in game number 1 between these two players. Seth's going to mulligan very, very quickly here. So did not like what he saw. It had to have no lands. That must be it.
Or maybe he learned his lesson.
Yeah. I love giving Seth a hard time. I remember we were doing like a casual draft, and this was during Shards of Alara block, and he was like a big Naya creature deck, because that was like one of the archetypes. And he had like an Obelisk of Naya just like in his board.
Okay.
Like when we were doing deck building, I'm just like, dude, you should play that Obelisk. So like you can just play like a thing out of schedule. And he's like, no, I don't want any more mana in my deck. And I'm like, but you can't just like keep like 3 lands and like 5 drops enough to get there. He's like, yeah, I can. I'm like, but the Obelisk bridges the gap. Fixes your mana. He's just like, I'm not playing it. And like after like trying to sway him for like 90 seconds, I'm like, dude, I can't. Just do whatever you want.
Yeah.
Just do it. And yeah, he 3-0'd, obviously.
Okay.
Yeah, he kept like a lot like a 2-land hands with like 5 mana creature. He's just like, yeah, I just drew land 3, 4, and 5. Then I killed him. Like,
super easy. Yeah. Didn't get flooded.
Yeah, I'm like, all right, Seth.
Whatever, man. You do what you want.
Yeah.
You do you. I'll do me.
I love him. I love him to death. Easy keep.
Well, it is an easy keep when the alternative is mulliganing and then you don't get to play Magic for a few minutes.
Yep. Seth's going to take a look at 6 cards here. Again, knows what he's up against. Black Blue Devotion. Pretty favorable game 1. We'll see if he can take it down, though. He's on a mulligan here. Don't know if he's going to take a second one or not, but he's going to keep. So Steve Rubin, number 4 seed, will begin things. Manfield to 6. Manfield with an island. Pass it back. Rubin will play a Swamp and a Pack Rat. So Seth will be put to the test here pretty early. But again, he does have 4 copies of Last Breath in his deck. What he doesn't have right now is white mana.
Yeah, you would think that Manfield's deck with effectively 11 dual lands, 6 islands, 6 plains. I mean, how often can you get mana screwed with that type of mana base, It's a
legit question. Now, this is where things actually get interesting for Rubin, because you have to make the decision, right, of, all right, am I going to actually move in on Pack Rat? Does he have a Verdict? Does he have Detention Sphere to make this a bad plan? Am I just going to cast a Nightveil Spectre that's in my hand, because that card could be better, especially when I have blue mana in my deck? Am I going to do anything? It looks like he's just going to pass the turn back, because, also getting Syncopated is realistic there.
Yeah.
And I imagine he'd prefer not to do that, so that's why you don't see him cast the Spectre or the Underworld Connections. It looks like he may discard the Spectre.
I don't know. I feel like if I were in Rubin's spot, there's some merit to making a Pack Rat, dealing the extra damage, and then maybe Seth is bluffing that he doesn't have any white mana, right? Like he has a Plains and a Detention Sphere and wants to force Steve to kind of move in. But even if that happens, Steve gets to untap and play Underworld Connections on his land, and then Seth is down a Detention Sphere, which is probably his best answer to the card.
Mm-hmm.
And then the shields are down. He doesn't have Counterspell mana open. So now, do you run out the connections?
He's going to try to now. I mean, you're running this out into the face of Syncopate and Dissolve.
Right.
Resolve might be the better of the two because he gets to scry and maybe try to find some white mana here.
Yeah.
And Seth is going to leave that card on top. So Rubin will pass the turn back. Seth draws a card. There's his first white mana, Temple of Enlightenment. He will take a look at the top card here, decide if it's going to stay on top or go to the bottom. It does go on top. And back to Rubin we go. Steve will draw. Let's see what he can put together here on turn number 5. Does have a backup Underworld connection, so losing the first one isn't the end of the world. Start by playing an Urboard.
It's just kind of painful that you have to start running out your best card into open counterspell mana.
Now this one, he can beat a Syncopate. Since he has the mana to pay for it,
Yep.
he has to worry about a Dissolve here, but he can't do anything about that, so. Seth taking a long look at his hand. This is good to go. This will be an activation. Rubin going to go down to 19.
Digging for one of his Thoughtseizes or the one copy of Duress that he has in his main deck potentially.
I do kind of like the way that he's playing this game right now, though. You know, he's kind of like, pacing with Pack Rat, chipping away at you, and then trying to resolve spells in the meantime. Not shoving too hard on Pack Rat.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I don't know. It's tough to say because obviously with Seth's kind of misstep in the early turns, like maybe if he just shoved on Pack Rat, this game would be over already. But it's also very difficult to do that when you have the capability of playing a longer game. You had 2 copies of Underworld Connections in your hand, you know?
Banishing Light's going to take care of the Underworld Connections. A Hollow Fountain will come to play tapped. And back to Steve we go. So Rubin will draw. That's a copy of Lifebane Zombie, so we can get a little bit of information on Seth's hand. See the Nightfell Spectre there, Watery Grave as well, and I believe the last card is a Devour Flesh. So the texture of Steve's hand's not great right now. He wants to try to close this game out pretty quick. Seth has been fumbling and stumbling around a little bit. Steve's been doing a pretty nice job of chipping away. See if he can try to get this game over with.
Yeah, I think it might be time to stop the chipping and actually start
speed up a little bit.
Yeah, start trying to do big chunks of damage before stuff like Elspeth or Sphinx's Revelation comes online. See that Seth has found his mana. Maybe you're getting Supreme Verdict the next turn. And then at that point, you're left with 2 removal spells and a Nightveil Spectre. If you're in Rubin's spot, what do? You know?
I actually kind of like casting Lifebane Zombie this turn. You're presenting lethal then. You can play Lifebane Zombie, get a look at his hand, and then play your Watery Grave untapped to be able to activate Pack Rat again.
Sure. Or
cast Devour Flesh if you cast Attention Sphere on one of your guys.
Yeah. But if you get Supreme Verdicted, then
it's
that just is.
kind of a disaster, yeah. And there is the verdict. There's a Hollow Fountain. Pass the turn back. Rubin will draw. He can reload pretty nicely here. Start by playing a zombie to see if the coast is clear to play the Nightveil Spectre. So here's the grip. A Syncopate and 2 copies of Last Breath. Interesting.
We saw in Seth's matches earlier that Last Breath was actually pretty good against the black decks. Was killing Pack Rat and Nightveil Spectre, but he hasn't really gone up against a Lifebane Zombie.
And I think you have to deploy the Spectre, just make him kill it, use the Last Breath.
Yeah.
Now, if he draws a verdict this turn, kind of stinks, but it's just in his Azorius Guildgate pass the turn back. So Rubin will untap. Again, he's got a Devour Flesh in his hand. Time to attack with both of these creatures. So here they come. Last Breath's going to take care of that, or at least attempt to, and it will get the job done. So Rubin will gain 4 life, go up to 23. Zombie will come across. Manfield's going to go down to 4. See if Steve has a follow-up. Just a Watery Grave that's going to come to play untapped. 4 mana. Desecration Demon.
To play around Syncopate.
Yep. We know Seth has Last Breath, Syncopate, and X.
And Steve is just really putting him to the test here.
Played this game well.
Yeah, I feel like it got a little scary there towards the end where if Steve didn't draw that demon, it was kind of like maybe Seth is going to stabilize on 1 life, and maybe there were a couple turns with the Pack Rat that, Steve could have been a little more aggressive.
Well, Seth is trying to climb out of it.
Yeah?
So he found an Attention Sphere, which is the perfect card, because he's already played a land for this turn, so that goes away. Actually, he hadn't played a land yet. I take it back. But I don't think, the piles would have had to line up appropriately for Seth to find a verdict there. So it's going to be an attack for 3. Steve is going to take care of that Jace.
And that was a good draw for Steve, having a Mutavault, but I guess Seth has the last breath still. But.
Seth is going to play an island pass the turn back. Rubin with, and
that's what you want to see.
Yep.
When you're trying to attack for lethal with Mutavault.
Can he syncopate this for the appropriate amount? I mean, I imagine he's just going to take last breath. Yep, take that, activate Mutavault, get you for 5. Lethal, yes sir. Steve Rubin does win game number 1 here over Seth Manfield. Black Blue Devotion up a game over Blue Eye Control. Typically, that's the hard game to win.
It is tough, but he had Pack Rat. He had 2 underworld connections. He had a couple of timely draws at the end there. The Demon and the Duress were both huge. Allowed him to push through those final points of damage. And that's exactly what you have to do to win that matchup.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like he stole that game, to me.
Kind of. Yeah, I mean, Seth Mulligan stumbled early, didn't have white mana, and was very much in the game still.
Sure. Either way, Seth Manfield down 1, Steve Rubin up 1 with Black Blue Devotion. Final trivia giveaway, 12 months, #SCG Premium on Twitter. Make sure you're following at SCG Live. And then again, we'll announce the winner at the conclusion of this finals match. You've got the question.
Yeah, so we've seen a lot of these Black Devotion decks. They typically play 16 creatures. Steve Rubin's deck is a little bit different. How many creatures is he playing?
And if you can name the number, how many creatures Steve has in his main deck, hashtag the answer, the hashtag of SCG Premium. Make sure you're following at SCG Live. And again, we will announce the winner of our 12-month premium giveaway at the conclusion of our final round, as we will head back down to the match. We will take a look at the sideboards. And you will see for Steve Rubin, he's got a Lifebane Zombie, 2 Notion Thieves, an Underworld Connections, 2 Doomblades, 2 Negates, an Ultimate Price, 2 Erebos Gather, that had 2 Drown Sorrow, and 2 Duress. Not as many cards as Betcher, but they're all still pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, an extra Lifebane Zombie if he wants that. He knows that Seth has 4 last breaths. 2 Notion Thieves, very good against Seth's big card drawing spells. Underworld Connections, which allows him to keep pace with those card drawing spells. Negate to stop anything that Seth might peel off the top after he gets his hand torn apart by Thoughtseize and Duress. A couple Erebos, couple Duress. Those cards all seem great. And then we do see Steve with 2 Drown in Sorrow giving some respect to the Rabble Red deck.
A little bit of respect.
A little bit.
A little bit.
Just a touch.
On Seth's side, again, those 8 creatures, 4 Nyx Fleece Ram, 2 Fiendslayer Paladins, 2 Archangel Thunes, served him very well against Burn in the quarterfinals. He's got a Deicide, 2 Dispel, Fated Retribution, 2 Gainsay, and a Negate. Again, we expect to see the Deicide come in, the Negate, probably not the Dispels, maybe the Fated Retribution, but by and large, he doesn't have a lot of cards to this matchup. Things worked out okay for him against Betcher last round.
Yeah.
But I don't know if they'll work out great this round.
I would say slight changes, like Negate, Deicide. Those are both reasonable cards, but basically every card that Seth has in his deck, he wants in the matchup.
I think life is looking pretty good for Steve right now. Being able to win game 1 means that you get to, he has to play 2 more games here. A lot of the time I think in this matchup, Steve was like, okay, I'm probably down a game and I have to win the 2 sideboard games, but now I've actually got a game to give.
Yeah.
And that's a really, really big deal.
I feel like it's a gift to just win that game 1. And especially like with how good his draw was, how bad Seth's draw was, and how kind of close it was at the end. It was like, you have to imagine that Steve was getting pretty worried there.
Yeah, he peeled the right cards at the right times, right? Like, he drew the Desecration Demon, where it's like, oh, Seth, you have to find an answer to this. I know what your hand is. I'm able to play around Syncopate, so if you don't draw an answer this turn, you're dead. Seth was able to play a Jace, take it down, find an Attention Sphere, where now Steve's like, okay, I can get you to 1. Can I get you to less than 1 to win the game? And then he draws Mutavault, which makes things very complicated.
Yeah.
So, and then he draws the Duress to clear the way for the Mutavault, and hey, life is good to go. So maybe able to thieve 1 there, but again, even if he loses game 1, I think his sideboarded games are quite good, that he'll still be okay, but now things get so much easier since he's up 1 and he can give away a game here if something doesn't break right, like we saw for Jared.
Right.
Where things just did not break his way in game 2 and he lost game 1. So.
Yeah, these black decks get a lot of sideboard help, and then meanwhile the blue-white control deck basically gets none.
Yeah.
Like maybe a couple slight upgrades. I think the Deicide does a lot of work being able to kill Underworld Connections for only 2 mana. It does a lot of good work against the sideboard Ereboses also. But ultimately, it is only 1 copy of that card. Negate might be a slight upgrade in some area, depending on what you want to cut for that. But really, the deck is the same. You just basically don't sideboard at all.
Yes, that doesn't have a lot of sideboard for this sort of matchup. So.
It's all main deck.
Yeah. His game 1 config is very, very nice. He's not sideboarding very much. We have seen, you know, players and builds of this deck sideboard a ton of cards in this matchup, but Seth is not doing that this weekend. So, to be fair, I mean, it's worked out for him so far.
Yeah,
He's in the finals of the tournament.
He doesn't really have to. And then he gets to play a bunch of anti-red cards and also cards for the mirror match. So,
Game 2 underway shortly here between Manfield and Rubin. One of these players will be our Standard Open champion here in our last Open Series event before our Season 3 Invitational next weekend in New Jersey, where we will punch 2 tickets to our Players Championship. And I expect to see both of those players doing battle next weekend.
Yeah. Can I shotgun one of those tickets?
I mean, I would be okay with it, but it's not up to me. So I don't have that kind of pull.
I thought you did. That's why we're friends.
Need a little bit more tenure. Seth looks like he's going to keep his hand. Steve will take a look at his. And we're underway here in game number 2. Azorius Guildgate to start things off. A swamp and a discard spell. It's Thoughtseize. Manfield's hand. A Sphinx's Revelation, a Banishing Light.
And a Deicide.
No, there's Banishing Light, excuse me. Yeah, and a Deicide. And then a couple of lands. So Erebos is covered. Underworld Connections is covered. And then there's the Mighty Sphinx's Revelation.
Yeah, I feel like Seth is going to need a little bit of help here, especially since he's getting Thoughtseized. I feel like this is exactly the type of hand that Thoughtseize is really good against, where you're able to pick your spot and just kind of take out the thing that Seth has the answer to that you have. So it's like, if you have a creature, you take the Banishing Light, and then Seth basically has no answer.
Banishing Light bites the dust. There's an island. Pass the turn back over to Rubin. Rubin will draw a card. Watergrave taps, and just kick it back over to Seth. On his 3rd turn, he'll play a Mutavault and pass the turn back over to Rubin. You see the Lifebane Zombie there. Desecration Demon was the draw. And Lifebane Zombie is where we will begin things. Seth will show his hand. The zombie will predictably miss. I mean, you do see a Jace there that was added to the grip. 2 Plains, Revelation, and Deicide. Manfield will draw. Looks like he picked up a copy of Sphinx's Revelation. Will play a Plains. And it's time for Jace. Up or down is the question, and up it goes. So Rubin will untap those 3 lands. On his 4th turn, he will draw a card. See if he has a land to play, and what he wants to do with this Lifebane Zombie. He does have Negate in his hand right now.
He does. I feel like within the next few turns, that Negate is not going to be super useful. If I were Steve, I would be pretty willing to just tap out. You know, like, Seth is a ways off from casting Sphinx's Revelation. The card that you really care about right now, Supreme Verdict, you can't counter it anyway. So,
and you know it's not in his hand.
Well, yeah. I mean, Jace was almost certainly going digging this turn, so.
D-Sphere, Dissolve, and an island are what Rubin will have to split up, and it'll be D-Sphere versus. So see if Seth has any interest in the counter spell and the land.
Yeah, Steve's ahead on board right now. Detention Sphere is almost certainly the more important card.
So that's what Manfield will take. 2 cards are going to go to the bottom.
Seth is basically just trying to play catch-up at this point, stabilize, give him time to make his land drops and play Sphinx's Revelation for a healthy amount.
Seth going to go into the tank here. Figure out what he wants to do on this turn. If he's going to cast Sphere, will it be on the Desecration Demon? Likely. Does he want to cast it at all?
Demon is really big.
It doesn't mess around.
I will just say that.
You know, is there a chance he casts a D-Sphere on the Demon and then attacks for 2 with the Mutavault? Maybe get a little chip shot in there?
Maybe. I mean, we've seen that incremental damage add up, especially against a deck with Underworld connections.
There's an attack. There goes Jace. Seth could be trying to rep some counter magic here pretty hard. There's a swamp. There's another Desecration Demon.
So Steve gets to play around Syncopate, but he doesn't get to keep negate open. And I feel like he thought about that for a little bit. He was like, well, maybe I should wait, you know? I just need one more land. He doesn't have it in his hand, but he could draw it very easily. But
this is a pack rat. You saw Verdict clean up the 2 threats, but now here's another Army in a Can card. It is the mighty pack rat here. Seth is going to play a Mutavault and now cast a Rev right into the negates. And that's interesting because I imagine like part of the reason he cast it then is because he did not want to get Notion Thiefed.
oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
And so, you know, because if he
that
upkeeps it, it's a disaster.
Yeah, that creates like a really interesting tension, just having like 2 Notion Thieves, 2 negates, right?
So it might look kind of weird. It's like, man, why are you casting it in negate? It's like, well, if I do it my upkeep, which is like what I would want to do, in case he negates
way
it on his
more
turn.
backbreaking.
Yeah, if I get Notion Thief, like I'm basically dead. Basically dead. You can see why the blue splash is here. It's for this matchup, and it's quite good. Pack Rat's going to come across for 1. Seth is just going to pass the turn back. See how far Steve wants to move in here with Pack Rat.
I feel like without him activating that Mutavault to get in that extra point of damage, that it's very likely he could just be going all in here.
Yeah, discard the Downfall, maybe discard the Desecration Demon too.
Oh, if you're not going to discard the Demon, you could have gotten in an extra point last turn.
Seth takes his chance here. Doesn't have to worry about Notion Thief.
Yeah.
He knows there's only 2 negates. One's already been cast. Do you have the other one? The answer is no. You get your Pack Rat, but I get my 4 life and my 4 cards. Smart move by Manfield there.
Yeah, and maybe that's another reason why he didn't mind walking that first Revelation to the negate, because he had another one. And then that also means that Steve couldn't make a Pack Rat that turn.
Yep. Game of cat and mouse between these two. Now I think Steve's deciding, okay, it's a time for me to actually shove. He keeps looking at that Desecration Demon. Yeah, he wants to make a rat, so he's moving in. And especially with Seth's shields down, I mean, this is a big attack if you include the Mutavault. And maybe even discarding now, too.
Yeah. Certainly depends on the card you drew and how valuable it is, but I can certainly imagine a world in which Steve draws another Swamp here, and that is worth the 3 points of damage, even if he knows that he's probably walking into a Supreme Verdict.
And this attack right now is for 4, 8, 12, 13, 14. If he discards the card, it would be for 17.
Yeah, this black deck turns the corner very quickly.
Steve says, I'm just going to do it for 14. You're going to go down to 9. Seth will draw a card. Shields back up. Does he have a Verdict or a D-Sphere? Oddly enough, Elspeth is not... It's fine in this situation to provide the necessary chump blockers, but it's not Elspeth minus to kill those.
Right, and that's certainly a reason to maybe not make that 4th Pack Rat, right?
There's an island. Six mana. There's Elspeth. So the elevator goes up. 3 soldier tokens are going to come into play. You have to imagine these are going to just try to chump block a bunch. Now Steve is going to twirl his pen. Decide if he wants to maybe activate Pack Rat here on the end step.
So it looks like Seth tapped his Mutavaults, leaving open Azorius Charm mana.
Yep.
And Seth only does have 2 of those in his deck, which Steve has seen. Like, you know, they've seen each other's deck lists. Yep. So at what lengths do you go to play around that? It seems like a very conscious effort by Seth to not leave open the Mutavault. So he's kind of just like announcing to the world, like, I'm going to use this blue and white mana. Azorius Charm is the only card that really matters for that mana cost.
What makes it maybe a touch interesting is, you know, he's repping Azorius Charm, but this could be him masking Last Breath a little bit better, maybe?
Maybe.
Because I could see a world where, you know, it's block my tokens, the Last Breath one of my tokens, get myself 4 life.
Yeah.
Keep my head above water a little bit.
But is there a world in which you need Mutavault to block a Pack Rat?
That's a very good question.
And in which case, you lose that option by tapping in that way.
Steve thought long and hard about activating Pack Rat, but he chose not to. So he just draws a card, goes to his turn. You see Hero's Downfall and a mystery card in the grip. Manfield sitting at 9 life. Rubin at a very healthy 18. He's going to come in here with 3/3/3 Pack Rats with the potential for them to grow. We'll see if they're going towards Elspeth or towards Manfield's life total. He's going right towards Seth.
Yeah, with Seth at 9 and Steve also having a Hero's Downfall, makes a lot of sense for him to just attack Seth directly.
Yeah. Decisions.
Yeah, this is a tight spot for both players. Like, any misstep here could be huge.
It's like pretty easy to just say, you know, just go 1-1-1 and move on with life, but I don't know if that's actually true. It's like he can, like, you know, he can take one of these.
Yeah, he could, and this is probably the least amount of damage that a Pack Rat is going to deal him. So if he takes 3 and goes to 6, and then saves that soldier for another incoming rat, which could be a 5/5 or larger.
Yeah, it's weird because like the level 1 play is just like, yeah, block, block, block. Like, what are we waiting for? But
right.
Then there's the Azorius Charm that you mentioned, and he's Azorius Charming the real rat instead of a token rat.
Yeah, Seth wants him to draw that Pack Rat again. He doesn't simply just want to kill a Pack Rat.
Now, I figured out what that other card is in Steve's hand with the Hero's Downfall.
Looks like a Notion Thief.
It is a Notion Thief.
Got any more revelations over there, Seth Manfield? You want to draw some cards?
The Notion Thief shield is down right now, as Hero's Downfall does take care of the Elspeth. So Manfield's going to draw a card. Again, he's already cast 2 revs. We know he has 2 more, and Jace's Ingenuity in his deck.
I don't really think it's time for that, though. I think it is time to answer those Pack Rats.
Yep. It's kind of an interesting situation, right, where, like, do you want to answer these Pack Rats now? Like, if you had a Detention Sphere, do you cast it now when you know the Pack Rat is on top of your opponent's deck?
Yeah, that's a dangerous spot to be in. Like, you deal with the problem for this turn, but you know that over the course of the next 2 turns, that problem is just going to reappear.
Yeah.
But also, Steve isn't really, you know, he doesn't have to cast the Pack Rat that he draws. He can just hold it.
That's true. 6 mana again. This time he's leaving up Mutavault. This is Aetherling. That is a tapped Hallowed Fountain. Pass the turn back. Huh.
Now, Aetherling is good. I'm not sure if it holds off an army of Pack Rats.
They're 2/2s now. You can make it into a 3/3. Mutavault can make it into a 4/4. Yeah, just no attack. That's basically, it's like, that's like as close to a Time Walk as Seth is going to get.
Yeah.
And I think he's got to be thrilled about that. Especially when he knows that Steve has a Pack Rat in his hand and like 1 mystery card, so he's got 1 blue mana available to save Aetherling, so nothing could really go too wrong there.
Yeah.
It's like, that's a pretty good exchange for him.
Yeah, I mean, Steve could have played the other Pack Rat from his hand and then had 4 mana available to make another rat and activate Mutavault, make them 5/5s. So he could have forced some action there from Seth. Either gotten in some damage or, you know, he would have had to use all his cards, granted, to, like, you know, make the soldier chump block potentially or get in 5 points of damage. But given where this game is going, that may have been worth it. I'm not sure. I mean, it's also very tempting to try and save that Notion Thief, right? Because if you get to snipe a Sphinx's Revelation with that, like, the game could certainly shift in your favor.
Jace Architect of Thought is how Seth will begin this turn. He's going to go down to D-Sphere, a Plains, and another D-Sphere. So,
almost certainly getting a sphere and a Plains off that one.
I don't think there's a world that exists where Steve's going to give him 2 D-Spheres. This card's too good against his deck.
Yeah.
This is kind of important for Seth, too, because it allows him to hit a land drop.
Yeah, Aetherling loves having extra mana.
So there's that. And here's this. So there goes these 2 rats, and now the path is a little bit more clear. Because Steve, if he wants to do the pack rat thing again, he's got to rebuild completely. And Seth had no interest in attacking there.
I don't like that. He's in pretty clear control. I don't think there's any reason to have to take the shields down. And like if he attacks with Aetherling, Steve could respond with an attack with Mutavault. And then he might have to react to that, you know, especially if he wants to keep his Jace around. And then he only had 3 mana left over, so he wants to keep Dissolve open, so.
And he dissolved the pack rat very, very quickly. Now, I think when he dissolved that pack rat, some of his lands were towards the top of the screen, but I think he tapped out to leave the shields down for Aetherling to actually die to a removal spell. But again, in the sideboarded games, Steve doesn't have a lot of removal.
Yeah.
It's basically Hero's Downfall or Bust, and he just cast a Hero's Downfall on Elspeth a couple turns ago, so what are the chances you have another removal spell? Because it has to basically be Hero's Downfall.
Right.
Pretty low. And if you do come my Aetherling, it's not like I lose the game. I just have to probably beat you with Mutavaults and Elspeth then.
Yeah, but he has 2 Mutavaults, and he still has a Jace active. You know, like, you don't need to win big with this deck.
It's red zone time now. Aetherling and Mutavault are going to come on in. You see Seth grabbing some lands here, so it looks like we're going to get a little bit of pump action. He's looking to close this one out pretty quickly. And it'll be 4 pumps, so let me attack for 10. That's going to put Steve down to a very convenient 8. And we know how good Aetherling is at dealing 8.
Possibly the best.
Jace ticks up, Lane comes back, Rubin draws a card. He's been sitting with a Notion Thief in his hand for some time now, but it really wasn't able to do very much.
Yeah, I mean, we saw the first turn that Seth cast the Sphinx's Revelation. He was all about not walking in a Notion Thief.
And it's weird because, you know, on that rev, he walked, and I'm putting walked into quotes, into the negate.
Yeah.
But again, when you kind of like retrace the footsteps of why he did that, it's like, if this gets Notion Thief, it's a disaster. If he has negate, it's not good.
We just do it again next turn.
Yeah, but I do it again next turn, and hopefully the Notion Thief shield is down. He only has 2 negates. The chances of this one resolving and not getting negated are very high, and then maybe I can turn the corner and get myself back into the game, and that's what happened.
Yeah, and I think Seth navigated that game beautifully.
I think he played a very good game of Magic right there. I really, really do. You know, how to kind of play those pack rat turns, but like, you know, Steve is like chipping away. He's getting to deal a lot of damage quickly. You know, Steve made an attack for 14 to bring Seth from 23 down to 9.
Right.
So, you know, all of a sudden, you know, Seth is kind of under the gun now about how am I going to navigate these turns? Like, do I have a Verdict? Do I have a D-Sphere? How do I, you know, make appearances? Like, I have these things so Steve doesn't, like, keep pushing the pedal to the metal. All of those things I thought he did a very, very nice job of. And then Aetherling came down, and we know how quickly that can turn a game around, and that's exactly what happened.
Looked like about 3 turns.
Yeah, didn't take long.
Yeah, that's what it took.
You know, it's kind of weird. Like, I know that Flock didn't play Aetherling in his deck. You know, he had 3 Jaces, a couple Mutavaults, an Elixir, and that's how he won, and he was able to do it in time at the Pro Tour.
Right.
You know, a lot of people consider Aetherling to maybe be training wheels. You know, that in combination with Elspeth. But, you know, Aetherling does something that, like, you know, a lot of decks can't do, which is, I'm going to close this game out, like, right now.
Yeah.
Really quickly. Like, do you prefer the Aetherling path? I know at one point in your life you were like, I don't need any of that stuff. You know, sometimes it's appropriate to play those cards. You know, again, Aetherling is something that, again, Flock chose not to play. Seth is choosing to play. You can see the effect that Aetherling has on games. Do you think it's right to go one way or the other, or maybe it's a playstyle preference?
Well, A, it is a playstyle preference, right? B, there are 50 minutes in the round, and not only is your deck slow, but like you could be playing against a mirror match. You could be playing against someone who's like kind of a new player and, you know, needs to take their time a little bit more, and that's understandable. You basically need something in 50-minute rounds to close out games if you want to finish 3 of them, you know? So something like Aetherling that I might disagree with holistically, just as a person, like, oh, I don't want that in my opening hand, you know? It's so bad. I think you do need it, and I think Seth has just really shown that, like, in that situation, imagine if the Aetherling was an Elixir. It's like, yeah, you gain 5 life and, like, shuffle in some good cards or whatever, but really, if Seth didn't have a lot of follow-up in his hand, like another Sphinx's Revelation, he would have been in trouble. And even if he did, he could have gotten Notion Thiefed.
Yep.
So I feel like Aetherling did something. Well, Elspeth was actually huge too. Like that was a potential win condition, was slowing down those pack rats, and then Aetherling came down and it just won the game in 3 turns. Whereas if it was an Elixir, that game would be in question.
I think it's wildly different. I mean, Seth's ability to close the game out very quickly, and basically cutting off Steve's draw steps, because there's a series of draws that exist that Steve can get back into that game.
Yeah, for sure.
And Seth's like, well, you get 2 draws, and I don't even know if those 2 draws actually matter.
Yeah.
Because I have Aetherling, so this game is basically over.
Yeah, and the trade-off there is that Aetherling is a pretty weak card to have in your opening hand.
Yeah, I mean, I think, over the first, opening hand and then maybe the first 5 to 7 turns of the game, Aetherling you don't want. You want to draw down on turns 16, 17.
Right.
That's when it shows up and it's perfect. Then you can, kind of craft your way around that. But, your opening hand or, one of your first couple of draw steps, heck, if you look at that card with the Temple of Enlightenment on the first turns of the game, it's almost certainly going towards the bottom.
Right.
So there's definitely, a real cost to having that card in your deck.
Yeah, it is not free, but at the same time, if that was an Elixir, I'm not sure if Seth wins that game.
I mean, we're still battling. I can promise you that much.
Yeah.
Steve Rubin on the play for game number 3. Winner of this game is our Standard Open champion here in Washington, D.C.
This is what some might say is a big game.
Yeah, this is the big game.
How do you feel Steve feels after kind of stealing game 1 and then that game 2 just slowly slip away from him?
If I'm Steve, I know that can happen, and I'm really glad I won game 1 because I know I have a game to give.
But you're just like, this is it. Now we're on the play. We have our great sideboard plan in action.
That's why they give you 3.
Yeah, that is true. I feel like Seth was also thinking that after game 1.
Yeah. Temple of Enlightenment. Seth is going to scry here. Now, this is notable because that's his second land, which means no syncopate, no negate. So Steve has Underworld Connections, and I believe he does. The coast is clear to cast that.
Coast is clear to resolve it, but is it going to stay in play?
Yeah.
4 detention spheres, 1 banishing light, 1 deicide.
He's certainly going to make the attempt. So that's in. We'll see if Seth has the answer.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine passing on the opportunity to cast Underworld Connections. Even if Seth does have something, it taps him out on this turn. Now you have another chance to resolve something. And it's basically like you just keep playing that game until something sticks. Until Seth has to take a turn off to maybe cast a card drawing spell or cast a Jace and try and find something.
Desecration even shows up to the party now, so the clock is already here. Temple of Enlightenment on turn number 4 here for Manfield.
6/6.
Boom, boom. Doesn't mess around. Thing has been running rampant over Standard for some time.
About a year now.
Yeah. I remember when Evan Irwin previewed that card on the Magic Show, and I was just like, that card's not good.
Yeah. And then you're like, oh, wait.
Yeah. That they're just a big idiot, and people will just sacrifice their creatures. They'll never get to deal damage, and, well, spoiler alert.
It turns out the Abyss is pretty good.
Yeah, they don't always have creatures.
Also that.
Yep. D-Sphere takes care of that. So Seth has answers immediately for the first 2 things. Now, Rubin has another Underworld Connections and another Desecration Demon. What to cast on this 5th turn? Do you try to get the clock online, or do you try to work your way towards card advantage?
I know that Owen Turtenwald had the opportunity, the same kind of opportunity where he could have played Connections, and then next turn could have played Lifebane Zombie, next turn could have played Demon, and he just went Lifebane into Demon, and it was he was very focused on getting that clock active. I think me personally, I may have been more inclined to get that Connections active as soon as possible, but it's kind of like an embarrassment of riches type thing, right? Where both options are very good.
Mm-hmm. Island here for Seth. Another answer? Yes. There goes Connections. So you can see the power of these enchantments. And some players opt to play the Planar Cleansing version, and that version's obviously quite good. Did win a Pro Tour, but these enchantments allow you to interact early and often.
Yeah. Planar Cleansing almost certainly would have been a little too slow this game. Plus, Steve having the blue splash in his sideboard could have very easily just drawn into one of his 2 negates, one of his, I don't know, 6 or 7 discard spells, however many he has.
Made the cleansing look foolish.
Yeah, a little bit.
Pack Rat's going to come down with the ability to make one. Seth with 5 lands in play. Hasn't played a land just yet. Hasn't found a Jace. Hasn't found any way to draw extra cards yet. Just answering Steve's threats. Steve's presenting questions. Seth showing answers. Now can Seth pull ahead? There's a Plains, passes the turn back. This is a Pack Rat. I think we're going to see a Rev. Yep. Shields are down. No negate, no Notion Thief to worry about. So
Yeah.
get your 3 cards.
Seth has been very good at playing around those cards. You know, Rev for 3, maybe not the number that he wanted to fire it off for, but he saw his window.
Yeah. Pack Rat's going to come across here for 4 points of damage. Manfield's going to go down to 19. And Rubin just passes the turn back with the ability to make more Pack Rats, but also keeping up the illusion of negate and Notion Thief.
Yeah, this black deck is generally operating at sorcery speed. So for this blue sideboard to have things like Notion Thief, negate, things that operate on a different axis, it makes the blue-white player actually have to think. Whereas before, you know, they kind of had free reign. They could do whatever they wanted.
Yeah, if your mana's up, it's like, okay, it's Hero's Downfall.
Yeah.
That's it.
Whatever. Or you can make a Pack Rat or
Yeah.
something. But we all know that you basically have nothing going on here. But this blue splash just changes the dynamic of this matchup completely.
Let's see what Seth puts together on this turn. Pretty healthy life total here at 19.
Yeah, and just drew 3 new cards.
That's a Jace. That resolves. Down it goes. Cards coming. See a Jace, a Dissolve, and a Temple of Enlightenment. We'll see how Steve wants to chop these up. I imagine it's not 3-0.
Probably not. I've seen that happen before.
I haven't seen it on a match we've covered yet.
Okay.
I'm still waiting as Jace goes to the bottom. Dissolve and Temple go to the grip. There is the Temple.
I think
that'll be Seth's land.
I think Huey's played some matches where it was like the guy wanted one of the cards, like he needed one of the cards, but Huey also wanted to give him all the cards so that he wouldn't put cards on the bottom because he was going to get decked.
Sure. Fine, 3-0 it is.
Yeah. The guy's like, okay, I'll take all the cards, and they just got decked by 1 card or something.
Huey, you're such a nice guy.
Yeah, thanks,
for all
man.
these cards.
Just a giver, you know?
It really is.
A sweetheart.
Seth in the tank here for the Scry. Saw Jace go to the bottom from the Jace activation that's in play. And he's going to put this top card from Temple of Enlightenment on the bottom as well. And pass the turn back over to Rubin. Rubin can make a Pack Rat, and it looks like he will. There goes Desecration Demon. This is a Last Breath to take care of actual Pack Rat. Now Seth does have, again, 4 main deck copies of Last Breath, so he's able to use one on just that normal copy of Pack Rat. Last Breath does work overtime in this matchup. There are Nightveil Specters, there are Mutavolts.
Yeah, and those are generally cards that cause blue-white a lot of issues.
There goes Jace. 2 damage will come across to Seth as well. He'll go down to 17. Rubin with 4 mana. Gonna play an Erebos, since the shields are down.
And that's not bad. I mean, Seth has used 3 of his Detention Spheres and Banishing Lights. He does have that 1 Deicide out of the sideboard to potentially answer that. And if Steve gets to untap, he can pretty easily turn that Erebos on or use it to just start drawing cards.
Yeah, Devotion's already at 3. 1 for Erebos, and Pack Rats do provide Devotion, even though they are tokens. So he's at 3 Devotion right now. He just needs 2 more. Putting 2 Devotion together for the Black deck's not very hard. And Erebos can come rumbling in.
Yeah, especially with Pack Rat already in play, you know?
Mutavault is Seth's land for the turn. You can see a copy of Jace's Ingenuity in his hand. Trying to figure out the right spot to cast that in.
Yeah, Seth knows the shields are down, so this would be a very opportune moment to kind of just sit back and draw 3 cards, but also you're facing down 2 Pack Rats and an Erebos.
And Erebos that's likely to turn on.
Right.
I think you're taking, you know, a huge hit. I mean, that just on the table's 9, and it can be more than that depending on how Steve, you know, operates on the turn, if it's pack rat activations or not.
I mean, then again, Ingenuity, 3 more cards, could very easily draw into another Detention Sphere, another Last Breath, something.
It's pretty hard to say no to Ingenuity on this particular turn, even though we don't have the exact texture of Seth's hand, just because Notion Thief and Negate are down.
Yeah, and you don't know when the next time that's going to be happening. Like, he can use both Erebos and Pack Rat at instant speed, which will allow him to keep mana open whenever he wants.
Yeah. So I think this is the correct time to try to resolve this spell. He discards a Syncopate and just passes the turn back. Rubin will draw. He hasn't played a land for a couple of turns. Looks like he picked up a copy of Connections. Gonna activate Erebos to start things off. Down to 21 he's gonna go. A Duress to clear the way. That's not a bad draw. Take a look. Especially after Seth just drew 3 cards. Now Seth is he has a dissolve at the forefront.
Yeah.
Yeah, he wants to protect the grip. So there's the dissolve. Time to scry.
Yeah, plus that's one of those spots where he's about to be able to cherry pick the best card out of my hand. By casting Dissolve, you take away the choice. You know, you basically make him have to duress the Dissolve.
Another activation of Erebos here. Going to draw a card. Play a Mutavault. That's pretty good.
That's not bad. That's 2 points of damage. Those Pack Rats.
Attack for 6. Manfield's going to go down to 11.
And overall, pretty good turn for Steve Rubin. I mean, he's still trying to, like, claw his way back in. He's trying to catch up with Jace and Sphinx's Revelation and Jace's Ingenuity. And that's tough.
And the fact that his Duress actually got a Dissolve is good. It's good and bad, right? Like, getting a Dissolve out of your opponent's hand and out of their deck is good, but what is Seth protecting? That's kind of the bad part of it.
Yeah, probably the card that you actually want to take with Duress.
Yeah. And I think more important than anything there is I imagine Steve wanted that Duress resolve not to just like take a great card, because obviously you'd like to do that, but get info of like, what does Seth have? He's drawn a lot of cards over the past couple of turns. I don't really know the texture of his hand.
Yeah, me neither. And it can be tricky, especially when Steve has these 2 Pack Rats, and Seth is at kind of a low life total. It's like, you know, how far do we go to try and, like, you know, finish Seth off with these Pack Rats? Are we trying to activate Erebos? Is his hand light on answers? Can we actually do this, or do we have to play a longer game?
The verdict is in. 2 Pack Rats are going to go away. You see Seth left up 2 Mutavaults here. Rubin will draw. And 6 lands here for him. See a Hero's Downfall. And the Pack Rat over there hasn't drawn a lot of discard spells in this game. Gonna play a Pack Rat to start things off. See if this resolves. Start this kind of sub-game again. Looks like he's also trying to find the right spot to try to resolve Underworld Connections. And there's a Dissolve. Now, we have seen Seth actually dissolve Pack Rat before in the last game.
Yeah.
He's been pretty aggressive about countering that spell.
I don't think he's super aggressive so much about countering Pack Rat, but just about using his mana every turn. Like, every 2 or 3 turns, he kind of just refuels his entire hand. But in the meantime, he wants to be casting those spells, trading 1 for 1. And I feel like he's not valuing the counter spells super highly, just because they're not very good against, like, discard spells and the 2 negates that Steve has after sideboard. So I don't know, like, some people are just like, well, I have to save this counter spell for his best spell, whereas Seth is just like, no, I just want to trade 1 for 1. I don't really care how.
Yeah, just counter something.
Yeah.
The draw here for Steve is a big one. He played Connections, and now he gets the Thought Seize. You see the hand, 2 Elspeths, a Sphinx's Revelation, and an Azorius Charm. Boy. I think you're supposed to take Rev.
Well, I think Steve is sitting on 2 copies of Hero's Downfall, correct?
At least one.
At least one, and I think I saw a second one, so maybe those Elspeths, they're going to make some tokens and then die. And if, you know, Steve has this Mutavault, Erebos is almost turned on, he has a reasonably high life total, maybe he can beat those soldiers, but can he beat the Sphinx's Revelation?
I don't think he can beat the Rev. The question is, can he beat the soldiers and the Mutavaults?
That is true.
Because there's 2 of those hanging
Yeah.
out there too. And so, presumably what happens is, Seth plays an Elspeth, makes some soldier tokens, and then Steve downfalls it, but the soldiers are left over. Does that again, downfall the Elspeth again. It's like, can I beat these 6 soldiers, these 2 Mutavaults? 16. Those creatures in play limit my ability to actually activate connections and Erebos
That is certainly
to
true.
draw cards. So,
But once you turn Erebos on, like, that's a pretty good brick wall. That alongside Mutavault. But yeah, I do feel like Seth could very easily win with a few Alpha Strikes, but at least that gives Steve turns to draw into something. Whereas the Revelation just kind of closes the door.
the Rev goes bye-bye. Let's see what Seth wants to do now. Do we know 2 Elspeths and Azorius Charm, and now a mystery card? He can also chip away with a Mutavault hit this turn.
Yeah.
6 mana.
That's
There's
pretty good. I
Elspeth.
mean, you don't have to bluff any counterspell at
No.
this point. Steve has just seen your hand. It's not very useful. Getting in that 2 points of damage is going to matter against Erebos and Underworld connections.
Yeah, he's definitely he's gonna chip him. So Rubin's gonna go down to 14. And the group right now is 2 downfalls for Steve. Mystery card coming. Azorius Guildgate was a land played for the turn by Seth. So now Rubin's gonna go down to 13. Draw a card. Don't have a great look. But you know that Elspeth's gonna get downfall.
Yeah.
Because you just want to make him recommit next turn. Lifebane Zombie, not great in this particular situation.
No, he would much rather have that be something like Nightveil Spectre, something with a little toughness that can hold off the army that Seth is going to create over the next couple turns.
That's kind of interesting. Like, Lifebane Zombie right now is not great. In theory, it could trade with a Mutavault, but at the same time, like, that Azorius Charm actually gets turned on now as far as putting Lifebane Zombie on top of the deck.
Yeah.
Like, Lifebane Zombie turns on Erebos, but, like, if Seth is just like, okay, attack, like, how are you blocking so that you don't get ruined by Azorius Charm putting a card on top of your deck?
Yeah, I mean, Azorius Charm is going to get you no matter what, I think. And I think that's like the most underused mode. Some might say lifelink, but I think it is very much the aggressive Azorius Charm. The attack into your guys, Azorius Charm your blocker, give you basically a semi-dead draw step.
There's Lifebane. Steve knows the 2 cards.
Yeah.
Elspeth and Azorius Charm.
Elspeth is white. There's a creature-looking thing on it. Why can't I take it?
I'm trying to think if there's a word where we don't downfall here. Ooh, sideways.
Yeah, I mean, if Steve knows that his Erebos is good for a block, but he's not able to block and kill something with it, maybe it's worth it to attack. Just like attack the Elspeth and then force Seth to chump, and then he loses a creature this turn.
Okay, I can see it. I can see it. There's a swamp. This is a downfall. I'm actually kind of in favor of the Erebos attack there.
Yeah, me too.
Actually now. Because if he attacks Elspeth, it lets him save a downfall.
Right.
Because like Seth is going to block.
Yeah.
There's almost no reason not to. And then that saves 1 damage coming back the other way.
Yeah, so either way, you're preventing a point of damage whether you attack or block. And if you attack, you almost certainly kill a 1/1.
Mm-hmm.
Which, in the grand scheme of things, not that big of a deal. But over the course of the next few turns, where it does look like Seth is going to have to make some Alpha Strikes with a bunch of soldiers and Mutavaults, plus you're trying to draw cards with connections to keep up with what's going on, like that 1 point of damage could be big.
So Seth's going to fire at Mutavault. You see Steve's going to count the untapped mana available for Seth. The answer right now is 8.
The answer right now is Elspeth plus Azorius Charm.
Yep, I can do both of those things. And the tough thing here for Steve is I don't think there is a very good block. Like, I think if I'm in Steve's spot, I put Lifebane Zombie in front of Mutavault. I put Erebos in front of a token. What probably happens is my something gets Azorius Charmed. Like, he's Azorius Charming this turn no matter what.
Yeah.
And so are you more comfortable casting, like, that 4-mana spell next turn or the 3-mana spell?
I suggest the 3-mana spell.
That's what I think, too.
Yeah. Plus, you get an extra block out of the deal.
Yeah. No, Elspeth's going to come down. It's going to take up.
It is possible that Steve is on a different plan than us. Maybe he wants this Lightbane Zombie to attack. I mean, it does have Intimidate. I'm not sure if that's where the game actually is, but depending on how many Gray Merchants he left in his deck, like, he could very easily just, like, attack Seth through this Elspeth.
Yeah, that's the card that plays, like, the other role in the game now, right? We might be shifting into Steve getting in a desperation mode saying, okay, I need to find running Gray Merchants, or at least a Gray Merchant, and a Gray Merchant actually does a pretty good job of stabilizing things here.
Yeah, because, like, the 2/4 body is also just very relevant.
I'm doing math. 6 soldier tokens out there, 2 Mutavaults out there as well. Again, I think this is a situation where Rubin does have to Hero's Downfall that Elspeth, because you can't let him make 3 more tokens.
Yeah.
Under any circumstance, because again, I imagine that Bile Blight is not anywhere near his deck right now.
Right. And you might be able to fight through 6 soldiers and 2 Mutavaults. 9 soldiers, 2 Mutavaults, that's a tall order when you're at 10 life. At this point, Steve is just struggling to play around what's in play. I don't think you can really worry too much about what Seth could possibly draw.
The cards that he draws have no impact on your decisions right now.
Right.
Like, you know, if you can't like do anything about them. Like
Yeah.
Rev or whatever, you know, Aetherling, like whatever. I can't beat that stuff. That stuff doesn't matter.
Yeah, so I think Steve right now is trying to decide, okay, am I able to stabilize here and actually try and play that game? Or is this Lightbane Zombie going to come at my opponent and I just have to find a Gray Merchant and finish him off?
Yeah, this is like the ultimate plane to win, I think, right now.
Yeah.
If he's attacking, this is the ultimate, like, I have to try to win. Yeah, he's going to downfall this. 3, 6,
so he has
7, 8.
Erebos to block a Mutavault.
Yep.
Takes 6 from soldiers, 2 from Mutavault. That puts him to 1 life, assuming Seth has nothing.
Yep.
And then all he has to do is top deck a Gray Merchant, and that should be it.
Yeah, because Gray Merchant would be for 2, 4, 6, 2, 4, 6, 7 plus a Lightbane Zombie hit.
Yeah.
And he's, first things first, he has hope that Seth just like bricks or whatever.
Right.
But again, the cards
we
don't
already
matter.
yeah, we already discussed that. It's like whatever Seth draws, you probably can't beat it anyway.
Yep. So this is the line that he's come up with, which is hope for the best.
Yeah, and I don't mind this line whatsoever. Trying to stabilize against 6 soldiers, 2 Mutavaults, like that's a tall order.
I just don't think he can do it.
Yeah, and this gives him a way to win. So, yeah, I mean, if he drew a Gray Merchant, he could probably stabilize against that, but also he could play this line, and if he draws Gray Merchant, he just wins.
Yeah. And that's part of the reason he didn't block the Lightbane Zombie the previous turn.
Yeah, he wanted that to clock his opponent.
Yep. I think that Rubin made it, you know, the line that he's taking right now plays to win the game over 2 turns.
Yeah, and honestly,
instead of playing not to lose.
And honestly, that's probably why he didn't attack with the Erebos, because he wanted to block with it and get that charmed and not the Lightbane Zombie. He needed the Lightbane Zombie to attack and actually deal damage. So, given that that's what his plan is over these last couple turns, like, he has sculpted this game beautifully.
I mean, even if he doesn't peel the Gray Merchant, at least he's come up with a plan.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's all you can ask for.
It's a plan to win and not a plan to not lose. Because, like, imagine if Seth still had the Azorius Charm this turn, he gets to attack for 10 damage and gain 10 life.
No life gain.
Oh, Erebos.
No life gain.
Okay.
I thought about that too. I was like, man, that Azorius Charm could be really good. And the charm was really good.
It was good,
He didn't get to use hidden mode.
Never mind.
I was thinking for a while it was going to be like one of those life gain games. Well, that text on Erebos. Now, again, we don't know the texture of Seth's hand right now. He's hiding it pretty well from you guys at home as well as us here in the booth. But we know what's on the table, and it's quite a bit of creatures, and it gives him the ability to get the job done in 2 turns. I guess he also has to be a little careful with how he attacks, because if he attacks with everything, right?
You put Steve to 1, but maybe die on the swing back?
Yeah, he just dies to Erebos plus Lightbane Zombie.
Yeah, I mean, it depends what he has.
That's 6 mana. What are you?
I feel like it's Aetherling or Rev. Rev, try and draw something.
2, 3. Doesn't gain any life. Huh.
so an all-out attack is off the table at this point.
Yeah,
That ship has sailed.
that's off the table. And I think if you're Steve, you're probably pretty happy about that.
Yeah.
Because that means I've got 2 turns. Like, I have 2 turns to maybe try to hit what I'm trying to get to.
Yeah.
And I also get a connections activation and potentially an Erebus activation to try to hit the Gray Merchant.
Yeah, Seth is not all-out attacking, putting him to 1, so now his card drawing's back online.
Yeah.
This game is getting weird.
That was really interesting. Now, he does have the ability to activate, again, the 2 Mutavaults and get in there, but that taps him out for the turn. He goes to 1, then he died on the counterattack from Erebos and Lifebane Zombie.
Yeah.
So that's
And Mutavault if he wanted to.
Yeah,
you
that's
know,
clearly off the table. Now, this is a D-Sphere.
I like this. I think this is where Seth wants to be. Revelation, drawn to an answer. If you remove the Lifebane Zombie, Erebos is off, so you can get in some hits with some soldiers this turn. There's definitely a lot of options for this detention sphere, though.
6. Rubin's down to 3.
Okay, so then attack for 5 with Lightbane and Mutavault. Any Gray Merchant off the top is going to do it.
And he gets a connecting activation out of it, too. This is the turn. Steve's going to draw. It is a negate.
That's not bad. I'm not sure if it helps, considering the game is probably ending on Seth's next attack step.
This is that?
I think
Thank
that
you. Is that a Gray
that's a
Merchant?
Gray Merchant.
Is that a Gray Merchant? That is, oh!
Steve Rubin!
Star City Games Standard Open champion with the top deck Gray Merchant of Asphodel on the last turn of the game.
3 turns in the making. Like, he very easily could have played that game in such a way that the drawing of Gray Merchant, like what he was playing for, just, gained him some life, prevented the inevitable. Instead, he set it up in such a way that it just won him the game outright.
Dude, that game was sick.
That is beautiful.
That game was sick.